It's time for Crab Lives.
All right, everyone. Welcome to Grab Lives. I'm here with Mike Elhihi. Thanks, brother, for coming on the podcast, dude.
Thank you. I'm super excited.
Yeah, and so some of this stuff is we're gonna segue into leadership conversations and some of the stuff you promote, and love to hear like about your department and where you're coming from right now.
Mhm. So a little bit about me then, to
Yeah,
kind of
man,
set
go ahead.
here. Yeah, so I'm an officer right now. I work out in California. I've been in my organization for almost 15 years now. Prior to that, I worked on an ambulance and had some volunteer time for about 5 years. So total about 20 years in the service. Recently became a company officer. I work in a fairly busy engine company. I'm heavily involved in the union. I'm our union president for our association within our department, and I absolutely love every minute of going to work, and I love every aspect of this job. And after I promoted, I felt there was a gap in something that needed to be said and needed to be taught in the fire service under the promotional prep umbrella, and that was really the genesis and the starting point for Front Seat Academy. When I started Front Seat Academy, I had no idea where it was going to be 2 weeks later, let alone 6 months, let alone where I am today. And every day it's just exciting because it's changing and it's forming to something bigger and better and greater. And I'm just excited for the journey. And every day is just an opportunity to get better. And I'm excited to present some of that today with you.
Hell yeah, man. I think a lot of people are thirsty for something different, something with more continuity,
Mm.
and something with more of like how the presence of the culture and how it's evolving, because it's evolving around nationwide. The
Yeah.
old paradigm of old leadership of like the single voice of authority and you being a good soldier, that's ending,
Yeah.
and the presence of those members, they know it's ending and they're kind of clawing at the walls as it's crumbling at the same time. So it's amazing to have this conversation. I'm really looking forward to how this is showing up, and I for LA City, I can only speak from personal experience. Like it's a large department. We have 106 fire stations, over 4,000 members, and our union was very strong the last couple of years. There's been a lot of upheaval and a lot of disarray, and there was almost like this coup happening within our union, and I really, as that's crumbling, I want to have this conversation, especially for my members listening to this stuff, to kind of hear what's being resurrected right now. And yeah, I'd love to start with like your opinion on leadership, how you kind of set a foundation through your leadership academy and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't have all the answers yet. And I think that's the point of leadership.
Yeah.
I think when we get stuck, and when we're failing is when we get into this mindset that I have it figured out. This is how I'm going to operate. Adjust to me. Um, Leadership for me is developing every day, like I said. But for me, if I was to sum it up in one phrase, I think it's about relationship building. I look at the fire service, I think, completely different than other people do, and some people may not like that. I go to work with one goal as an officer. I may be the leader based on paper because I have the bugles and I sit in the right side of that seat, but I am no different than any other person on that apparatus that day because the community doesn't differentiate me from anybody else on that apparatus. I do not have all the answers, but my job is to orchestrate the best team in the room. It's not to be the best in the room, and that's how I go to work every day. And in order for me to do that, that means I have to take a step back. That means I have to follow some of my own rules and my own ethos of not speaking first, listening before speaking, and really understanding where people are coming from first and foremost before pushing them to operate into a position. I absolutely love leadership. I think the biggest hiccup that we're facing today is that we are making excuses for why leadership is not working with the newest generation, and we're expecting them to adapt to the way we've always done it
Mm.
rather than adapting our styles to the newest generation coming in. I actually just wrote an article on this. So tragically, my nephew just passed. He was 17 years old a couple weeks ago. And I had the most, I mean, just biblical epiphany when I was at his services. Because he was so young, they had a lot of members of the high school. His basketball team was there, and the entire school was there. And the first night was a viewing, and at the there was a viewing, and the viewing ended like at 7:30 at night, but all the kids stayed, and everybody left, but the kids stayed. And the next morning, I found out that the kids stayed till 9, 9:30, 10 o'clock, to the point where the person owning the viewing site had to say, "Hey, you guys have to go home." I thought, wow, that's very cool. It's very that's amazing. What an amazing connection to be a part of. The next day was the burial. The burial was like at 3 p.m. Burial ended. The kids stayed. They brought down the tents. They brought the heavy equipment in to lay down the dirt. They packed it down. They watered it. They removed the chairs. They removed the tents. They removed the awnings, and the kids stayed. And the kids stayed for like another 2 hours after. And I later come out, the kids stayed and they sat around the burial site, and they just sat in silence for like another hour, 3 hours after every adult had left. And they're 17. They're this newest generation that we keep talking about in the fire service, the newest generation coming in. And I said, oh my God, we keep saying that this newest generation doesn't understand the connection, or has no buy-in, or is not building relationships. We keep making excuses why they're not fitting in the fire service. But I witnessed community. I witnessed passion. I witnessed love. I witnessed people feeling a part of something bigger than themselves. And I said, it's there. We just haven't learned how to tap into it yet. And that's what I think leadership is. And so what I saw offsite with these young kids, I wrote this article and I said, maybe it's not that these kids aren't getting it. Maybe we're not just providing them what they need at this moment in time. And maybe that's where the failing point is.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, it's our inept nature to not adapt. Like there's two things firefighters don't like. It's the way things are and the way things could change. Or it's changing the way things are. Like two things firefighters hate. And because you're never going to make them happy, you know what I mean? But in a leadership role, your ability to adapt to your environment is one of the key points of being a leader. And that's because you have to go to every single incident and adapt to it. And with the framework and the foundation of what our training is, right? However, it's never the same. It's always different. And when a leader comes through with a sense of humility and composure, compassion, these qualities are the qualities that run the firehouse and create a sense of openness, and that resilient. That's what creates real resilience within the fireground, because it allows others an open door to become more adaptable to their own environment as well, more agile, and create more of a centered confidence, because you've set the framework from the get-go by your behavior. And so that's really where it starts, is how we look at ourselves, our behaviors, and how we see who we are. The fire department's really built on a lot of judgment, and that judgment creates a lot of fear, and it creates a lot of hushed voices. And I think a lot of our problems are about us being unheard. And there's this idea, we have to shift from ego to essence. And from that essence is all about going past the roles we play, past the ranks, and come back more into our human nature, our humanness of who we really are. And it's not the firehouse coming from a place of command. It's more of a community of hearts. And when we work with community of hearts, we start to realize it's less about the hierarchy and more about shared humanity. And that's really how we have to shift things. And so going back to the story you're telling, this was a community that's evolved over shared hearts. It was never about hierarchy. And when you're working around, anyone who's played sports, most of firefighters have played sports, right? That's why we're in this game. And that group of people you've grown as a team, whether it's from freshman year to senior year, or you played club sports or whatever, that community, it's evolved into one single unit, to where you don't even have to speak words to each other. It's this divine telepathic experience between each other. And that's really what we're looking towards. And when I hear stories about a young person dying and things like that. It's an activation for others. It's an opportunity for others to look at themselves. That's usually what death is, because from death comes rebirth. And it becomes something we have to ponder on and to think about, and like, what purpose did this person serve through their demise? What challenge does it give to me as I move forward in my life? And these are just things I've asked, because I've folded flags of different firefighters in my department, and I've seen the activation it's sent through, the ripple effect it's caused, and it's truly amazing. So I'd love to piggyback kind of off what I'm talking about here, about the
You've
old
said
paradigm of judgment.
a lot of really great things. I'm trying to like mentally keep tab because I want to touch things. The first is what you said about these young kids. I mean, I look about it was so inspirational, and I was naive. I walked into these 17-year-olds are never going to understand what's going on here. Like they're gonna enjoy the times they have with my nephew. It's gonna be a sad day, but I felt like they weren't, and this is my fault, and this is my own ego. I didn't think that they were mature enough to understand the capacity of the situation. But I was so wrong. And I walked away learning. And I walked away with a different mindset in the firehouse. And I directly correlate to how we treat our probationary firefighters. We talk about empowerment, and we talk about making you feel like you're a part of the team. And we talk about how you're bigger than something other than just yourself. And you're part of something that's impactful. And on these day-to-day, on these day-to-day runs that we do. Yet for 18 months in some organizations, we isolate you. We tell you that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We tell you that you have to be first at the kitchen up at the kitchen table and last to sit down to eat. We tell you have to be first to do this. We inundate you with chores, and we call that empowerment and learning lessons. They're just chores. We do it out of the goodness of our hearts because we're thankful for doing this job, and we pay homage to the people who've allowed us to come into this organization because it's so great. But they're just chores. So maybe it's our opportunity to adapt to this newest generation and what they're looking for, and find the missing key and how we bring them into the firehouse. You can still treat them like a probationary firefighter, hold them accountable to standards, but you can also empower them at the same time. And it goes back to the second point you said about what you're doing as an officer. I know we say in life that time is the most valuable currency you can have. Without a doubt, I agree. Inside the firehouse, it's energy. I think the company officer and the energy they bring when they walk through that apparatus door changes the entire dynamic of that day, and will change the entire dynamic of that crew. If you are an officer that is enjoying the job right now, everybody goes through highs and lows, but you're coming in with intent to enjoy the job today. Maybe get a little training in, have dinner with the crew, not go, everyone eats their own separate ways, work out with the crew, enjoy some downtime with the crew, have a commander's intent for that day. That crew is going to follow. And if they don't follow, they're either going to resent you because they don't like what you're bringing, or they're going to follow someone else in the firehouse, which then begs the question of who's leading that firehouse and where's that culture driving to. So I think on both of those statements that you made, you're 100% accurate. The problem is how do we translate it to current officers? That is my struggle. I almost feel like everything that we're doing now, talking about leadership and empathy and growth and empowerment, yes, some officers who are current officers may listen to and say, that's really good, I'm going to try that. But for the normalization of deviance, I've always done it this way. I've never had an issue. I've never had an HR complaint. So I'm trying to drive this message to the firefighters who are looking to promote, or the probationary firefighters who are now becoming senior firefighters, and in turn are stepping into a form of informal leadership on the fireground.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. And I think what you're mentioning too is a really important concept for those who don't understand fire department dynamics and firehouse dynamics. And it's really like each station creates their own laws, like have their own culture, and in order for you to survive in that culture, you got to understand those laws. And the pecking order is huge. And I don't know if it's huge for you guys, but it's huge for the LAFD. And for us to understand, or for those to understand what a pecking order is, it's a hierarchy, but it's a chain of command that works on incidents, not necessarily as much inside the fire station.
But we use it.
It's used. It's unknown laws that we have to understand it. And the rookie knows that. The rookie knows when not to speak up around certain people, because that rookie knows that it's not the best place to speak, because you're not going to be heard, or you're going to seen as a piece of shit. And so there comes like there comes with some like intelligence with precision when you got to kind of adapt to that. But the pecking order is just a real thing. You know, it is what it is. And I'd love for people to kind of maybe shift a perspective around using like the Knights of the of a Round Table, you know, because that shows a bit more value. And I love fucking like medieval movies, dude. Like Braveheart is one of my favorite movies. And like it's just so important, because at the round table, each knight, a knight who serves a purpose, has some sort of value in the dynamic of how things are being ran. And so when it's treated like that, and I've been to, you know, many different stations when it was treated like that, you know, it created much more of like a cohesive unit when that was instilled into that station's culture. And I've been to other stations where, you know, even though I had some time on, you know, my voice was unheard, because first of all, I'm a paramedic, and some stations paramedics are not seen as value, because you're never there and you're out running calls. And by the time you get back, like everyone's, you know, grab assing and shooting the shit, playing handball and like doing stupid stuff, and you're never there. Right. So you got to eat the shit stick. And so, you know,
you think because I am still trying to understand the disconnect. I see it. I acknowledge it. And like you said, we have microcultures in each of our firehouses, and there's only so much I can do. But in my department, where a firefighter could leave my shift, go work overtime 3 miles later, and experience 3 miles away and experience a completely different culture, it's incredibly difficult to maintain one mission and one value system that's an umbrella for everybody. So what do you think that dynamic is? Why? Is it fear-based? I think it's ego-based, but I want to hear your opinion. I think it's ego. I just think it's ego.
Yeah, I mean, ego is just a mask, you know, that's meant to use for protection. And no, the ego is not a bad thing. You know, I believe it's still an expression of the soul. You know, however, it's not supposed to be in the front seat, and that's not supposed to drive your life. You know, the ego is our motivator. It's something that pulls us from the ruts of ourselves, and kind of like is your great teammate, but it is not the leader of your team. So I love to like bring this up, because there's a lot of misconceptions around the ego in general, but it's not necessarily it's just a lot of fear-based actions, and protection is a fear-based action, and it comes from someone teaching someone else something that worked for them, but it doesn't work. It only works to a certain extent. You know, it's limited. And things that are limitless are qualities like nourishment, and adaptability, creativity, and being able to derive things like health and family. Like those are things that drive true resilience. You teach other members, younger members, those things, and you create more values that are used not just in the firehouse but at home. Then you're creating lifelong lessons for someone. And you know, the ego it's a bit strange, man, because you know, we all have to kind of like listen to whatever the captain's saying when he's driven by that, right? And it doesn't help very much, but we all see it, how it's not effective.
Right. I love everything you said. I do think we have created this culture of a negative connotation of ego. I mean, just where I work in the surrounding areas, when we get a structure fire or something, someone gets on the radio, everybody switches over to the radio and they listen to how that person sounded on the radio, right? They want to hear the arrival report. And then what happens is we switch over the dial and everybody starts to shit talking, right? Or did you hear that? Did you hear that? And so because you're on the receiving end of that, when you're on the viewing end of that, you start to pick up like, oh, next time that's me, I better sound good on the radio, or everyone's talking about me at another firehouse. And I think we start to build up this anxiety and this paranoia, which maybe engulfs our ego in a negative way, where we don't want to be talked about in a bad way. We don't want to be known as that firefighter or that officer that gets it wrong or does a bad job. And it's almost like a security system for ourselves that we sometimes over ego everything. And I see it most often in my union position, whether ego kind of drives you from being right versus being effective. And you have to make a decision as a company officer or as any informed leader. Like, do I want to be right here? Like, do I want to make my point and know that I'm right? I'm dealing with it right now. I have an issue with another firefighter that I'm trying to navigate with his company officer. The company officer is absolutely right in the situation. There is no doubt. You can write the person up. You can do whatever you want. You'd be completely in your means to do that. But at the end of the day, is that going to be effective? Or are you just going to have the same problem but with more paperwork? And so that is the challenge that I think ego brings into it a little bit.
No, you're very, it's very true. And, I just want to remind everyone, like, if you are a firefighter, even police officers, like, all of you started this with an intention of serving others, right? That's like generally what we wanted. And I just want to remind all of you, like, you guys are a living embodiment of an unbreakable spirit. So what happens is that over time, that spirit gets stifled through judgment. And one of the main patterns of behavior is competitiveness. And usually competitiveness is all about self-righteousness and the need to be on top. So through that, we instill like these other laws that are associated with how we interact with one another, whether it's one station versus another station. And so these are things that are really driving the hidden layers that are the driving force of how we create our circumstances, how we create culture. And so these are like kind of like fundamental, but no one talks about them. No one understands them. No one's been able to dissect that,
You just basically described the promotional process.
For sure, dude.
It's all self-righteous. You've created a finite game in which you are competing against your peers for a top spot or to get an interview. And in that process, you hoard information, you make decisions based off fear, and it's all about self-preservation and self-isolation. And then we ask you to then get promoted because you did so good at the self-righteousness, self-preservation, hoarding of information till test day, doing well. And then guess what? Now you're a company officer, and now you have to do the exact opposite to be effective. It's a weird dichotomy.
Oh, 100%, man. It is strange, right? But I am curious, some of the fundamentals you're instilling inside your leadership program in your promotional process.
Yeah. So a couple things. I think historically when in any organization, until you decide to promote, everything you do is about developing yourself for the career, right? You're a firefighter. You want to become an engineer. It's for the betterment of the organization. You want to become a truck driver, boat pilot, drone operator, whatever you want to do. You're growing, you're building your personal slide trace to be able to operate on the fireground. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Two things then happen when you want to promote. One is we stop worrying about the fireground, and for whatever amount of time you start to study, all you do is you focus on the test process. And, I talk about this in a bunch of other podcasts. I love reading, and I read Simon Sinek a lot. I love everything Simon Sinek has to say. And he talks about how in life, there's finite and there's infinite games. A finite game is something that we are very well aware of. We watch it every day on TV. We participate in it: football, baseball, basketball, known players, known rules, known penalties, how to score points. There's always a ranked winner and there's always a ranked loser. That is the promotional process. And then in life, there's infinite games, which are, completely different set of rules. There actually are no rules. The point of an infinite game is to keep it going as long as possible. Players come and go. It's the fireground. We don't get a choice on what we respond to, who our crew is that day, type of building we're responding to. Is there a trap victim? Those are infinite games that we have to participate in. But the test is finite. And so culturally, what we've done is we've taken someone and said, hey, now stop thinking about the job, and I want you to solely focus on the test. And we've put this test on this pedestal, and we've isolated it. And so what's happening is you're getting people who have been absent their entire careers, who are really good test takers, who score really well on the exam. They get promoted, and then they're put into a position of leadership, and they're struggling and they're failing. And what do we say? Oh, that guy should have never been promoted, or man, what are you doing? But it's not their fault. We have created a process, which this is the product. So I took a step back and I said, okay, how can I create something that tackles both? So my theory is that I believe in the firefighter more than I believe in the process. I have proven that you can teach leadership and teach the seat while preparing for the test. But the test is secondary. And that is basically my mission behind Front Seat Academy. I will prepare you for the test. There is no doubt. Because at the end of the day, the test is just a game. It's based on points. You just have to know how to get the points and where to lose the points. And if you do that and understand the rules of the game, it's just like golf. I play a lot of golf. I know on a par 4 when I can lay up and when I can go for it. It's no different than the test. There's interview questions that are differentiator questions and just standard questions. You got to know which ones to go for, which ones you don't. There's no different. It's a game. So I'm not worried about the test. I'll help you with the test, but I'm more empowered to get you ready for the seat, because that's where we're seeing our problems. We're not seeing our problems in the test. I don't care how well you can do a tactical sim. I hate teaching the promotional process because that's not my passion. My passion is leadership. My passion is a seat. My passion is bridging the gap between what we're seeing now and what we want to see. But until the fire service changes, I need to help all those firefighters who are students of the craft, who are ready to lead, who have a desire to be in that position and have a growth mindset, who are just empowered to do this job, get there. Because I don't ever want the test to be the reason why they don't. And that's really where my thoughts are.
Yeah, I think it's less about like wielding authority, and it's more about establishing things like trust, growth, and unity within your crew. So the entire crew grows together. That's like the station dynamic. You know, running a fire and critical incidents, that's another ball game in itself, and that comes usually from experience, from great mentors who were able to act in that seat with a different type of authority and calm and centered and complex. And when you go to these incidences, that's where it all counts, right? That's like where it's game time. So I think it's really difficult. There's so much to it, and being in that role, in that seat, and looking towards great leaders. And you will fall back on the role of Dex and your experience, which really counts as you start to lead towards promotion, and to see how dynamic you really are. But a lot of times, like for our department, we have like it's up to like minimum of 5 years, and the guys who have taken the 5 years, who have had the 5 years, taken the test, they know all the answers because someone's coached them to say all the answers, right? And they go into the field and actually have to act in that seat. They have a really hard time, and sometimes they get demoted. And speaking from like the city of Los Angeles, like field of experience, we go on these crazy incidences all the time. And so you have to really understand like your purpose and your role and how you can adapt to that. But truly, in my opinion, the firehouse is what matters the most. The individuals are what matters the most. And I would say my experiences at the firehouse is what caused me the most stress and caused me the most harm, based off how I was treated, how I was taught. And those things, when I did my own inner work on myself, matter way more than going on these crazy horrific incidences or things where I have near death experiences, things like that. None of that stuff really bothered me. It was more so the way I was treated, the emotional harm, and the stifling of your spirit when you're hushed up, and when you just got to shut up and do your job and be a good soldier. And there's like so we have administrative betrayal. It's a real thing, right? There's nothing we can really do about that. The union can do some stuff,
Yeah.
but there's something called a wounding of disconnection and depersonalization, and that's a loss of purpose and a loss of autonomy. And like your humanity is overshadowed by duty, or you're just a cog in the machine, and that shit hurts, dude. When you're just like feeling like you're just a part of this giant machine. And so I think when we are less of that within the firehouse, and we're treated with some respect, I think that's really what we are all thirsty for, who have been treated or mistreated inside the firehouse, because that all plays into the fireground. When you don't treat someone like that and you instill some of these qualities, like trust and openness, it allows much more integrity and humility to start to advance within that person, and confidence.
I'm smiling because I am so happy that we're jumping on this. I jumped on this podcast with you because this is what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to talk about the course, the promotional course. I think that's great. People can see it. I don't need, this is what I'm so passionate to talk about. What you just spoke about. Oh my God, bless you. It is, people need to hear it. And that is that it. I'm at a loss for words because you phrase it so well. Because you're right. When we go on calls, when those tones go off, we do a really good job for the most part, right? We rarely come back like, man, we really messed that one up, because we figure it out. We're not operating in isolation. We have multiple engines company, truck companies, battalion chiefs. Although you may not have seniority, there's people on the fireground with experience that can chime in. So we do a good job of covering each other. We cover and move really well on the fireground. But 99.99% of our problems occur in the firehouse because of what you're explaining. It's funny. I work across from a captain. He always jokes that in the firehouse, he's just an R number, like a Star Wars, like a droid number. Like, he's just a trooper number. He's R845.
Yeah.
You know, and from the union perspective, we talk about all that all the time. It's easy to be categorized into a budget spreadsheet or just an itemized line item that you're just, an FTE or just this person. But that person is a soul. It is, I love Gary Vee, and he talks about it. It's like the ability, the fact that you were born and the odds of that happening and how incredibly like special you are. It's like 1 in like 40 billion trillion is like the number, the chances that you are going to be born, right? You are an individual with a soul. You're a heart, you're a brain, you're just embodied of just energy, right? And vibrations and frequencies. And that you get put in the firehouse, and for some reason, all that gets lost, and people's identities get lost, and they feel belittled, and they feel small, and they don't feel empowered. That is where the problems happen. That is where I think when we talk about organizational trauma, or how you phrase it, that is the result. And I think leaders can recognize that and be the stopgap, right? This may be going on, but today in my firehouse, you are more than just a number. You are more than just a probationary firefighter in your second week. You are an individual who is incredibly talented and has a beautiful spirit, and is somebody that is more encompassing than what we've categorized you as. And when you recognize that as a leader, how could you not feel empowered as someone working with that person? That's the connect we got to start making. That's the connection. And that is what I'm passionate about bringing to people. So passionate that I'm literally in the process of writing a course to teach. Some people aren't going to like it, but it's called Human Leadership. And we're breaking down leadership to being back to humans. What are the 5 impressions that you feel? How are you seen? How are you heard? How are you felt? How are you remembered, right? What are these impressions that you're bringing to the people around you, and the people around you are bringing to you? That is where we have to get back to, I think, as not only officers in the fire department, but maybe in the police department, maybe in corporate America. We need to get out of our own ways and realize that just because we have an employee number, that does not directly correlate to who we are as individuals. There's more to there, and we have to explore that.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love how where you're headed in in the role you're playing for teaching, and because it's needed, it really is. And I love how you're speaking about empowerment, and I want to remind people, like, your power ends where your fear begins, and you cannot live a life of empowerment if you're in a state of victimhood. So it's your responsibility, it's your role in understanding where that starts for you. And I had a teacher explain to me to write down every time I felt like I was a victim. And it was amazing. After a week, I had wrote down so much, man, and I had realized how much it's a choice. And it comes down to how I choose my inner decisions within myself and how it reflects my outer world. And it's crazy when you start to work on yourself with these small, little practices, because it really makes a difference. And when you start to unwind all of it, things open up in your life. You're opening up doors within yourself because you closed an energetic trap within yourself. But in the end, we all do it to ourselves. So we have to really look inward and start to access that within us in order to create a ripple effect outwardly, because that's just how it works. And when you're talking about empowerment as well, like empowerment is not like a falsehood of how we just referenced the ego. It's something more about this autonomous, like divine essence you carry with inner confidence within yourself, because you hold yourself accountable unto yourself, and you're responsible for your own actions. And that's really where it starts to begin as far as like compounded growth for yourself and others around you. And I've always put an emphasis more so on my family and health rather than my job. And so, the job's great. It's a beautiful career, and it does teach me a lot, and it helps me to understand myself. However, when I go home, I cannot act like I am this, generalized Nazi around my station. It's not like doing housework and like treating my wife like a good soldier. It's like I have a hard time adapting to her, to treating her like a true woman, like my queen. And these are the things I start to really emphasize. And I had to check myself many of times where I had to check my values. I had to check my standards on which I live. And it shows, and it goes really far when you start to kind of like understand how dynamic and how precise you can be with you do small practices like this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody should be doing that. I couldn't agree more. I fail all the time at home. It's not because I'm not trying. It's because the dynamics of the firehouse are so different than the dynamics at home. And we spend so much time at the firehouse, and in the moments that, and you can all probably argue that, there are tragedies that happened at your home life, but we are around so much tragedy and so much ill will in the firehouse when we respond to calls, that I think the time that we spend in the firehouse in those moments is exponentially greater than those similarities at home. So we've adapted. Sometimes I personally, and I'm sure you feel the same, I tend to adapt more to the firehouse culture. And then I come home and I try to bring it in. And my wife tells me all the time, "You're talking to me like I'm one of your firefighters." I hear it all the time. And my ego builds up and I'm like, "No, I'm not." Right. Instead of being like, "Yes, I am." And typically I'll cool down for a few minutes and I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm really messing this thing up." It's not because I'm genuinely not trying. It's because I'm dipping my one foot in cold water at the station, and I'm dipping my other foot in hot water at home, and I'm having trouble acclimating.
Mm.
And I wish, and I empower every officer and every person in formal leadership to, how do we start to make these two environments similar? What's the difference? Oh, and we talk about, the firehouse is the firehouse. Don't bring your work home with you, and don't bring your home to work with you. That's so untrue. You can't do that. We're human beings. When you talk about it, we're emotions, we're feels, they're going to blend. And I think we as leaders, and anybody in formal leadership position, needs to recognize that and create an environment where there are similarities, where when you, like, if we truly are leaders that care about our people, it is important for me to create an environment in the firehouse in which they can go home feeling good about themselves, healthy, so that they can have a good working relationship at home with their wives, with their spouses, with their kids, with their friends, with their neighbors. And likewise, if somebody comes into work and they're feeling down, and I can tell and I can see their expressions, it is my job as the officer to dig into that and find out what is it going on. Because is it me causing you to go home and feel that way, causing problems, or just bringing it back? Am I adding to this cycle? Or is there something that I can do inside the firehouse that can help you at home? I don't get it right at all, maybe 50% of the time. And I think that's just natural because I'm growing, right? Every day is a new day. I've never experienced today. I've only can talk about what I've experienced yesterday. I have difficult conversations all the time with because I work in a double house with my counter captain, and he gives me advice on home life. How often are we doing that in the firehouse that's productive? I think those are the little things you can do to recognize the two different environments.
Yeah, and speaking from like experience, not all stations are terrible. Not all departments are terrible. I think we want to have a healthy conversation around the things that are most important, because there's a lot of lot of it has gone on the back burner, and we wait until there's just a crisis, and we are dealing with a crisis with a lot of hurting first responders. We just have this large array of mental issues, and we don't know how to just kind of dismantle it, or how to pick it apart. It's not treated just by therapy and prescriptions. I guarantee that. And it really starts with the culture. It starts with how we mend each other, and it starts with that in itself. But if we ignore that part, that's where things start to really manifest at a subconscious level. And it's just over my years of career. I mean, I have almost 9 years. I have 9 years with LAFD, and then 8 years prior doing other shit with the Forest Service and being a medic. But over the time, man, like I've noticed the true best leaders I've come across are leaders who've been through some shit, and they've been through a lot of mistakes in their life. And those are the ones who I was able to seek mentorship. And over time, I've just noticed, like, I started to see the fire station when I get really nervous as a rookie and things like that. I would see each individual as a young child. And when I was unable to see someone as a young child, then that was going to be my mentor. That was someone who I was going to seek for advice, because most of the time we're just acting out our own childlike behaviors, like throwing fits, acting aggressive, not getting what we want. So we judge and make someone else feel bad. Like, these are all things you deal with on the playground from grade school. And it took me out of my anxiety when I started to see that, because I started to really be able to see myself as well, like how I was acting towards other members, because I was at an assignment where I became a fucking asshole, and it was because of the leadership in that station that started to weigh on me and make me act a certain way. And if I didn't act that way, then I was just rid from the tribe. And so it just really was a psychological thing that I had to work around.
Right. Sorry, let me just do that. I love that. And I thank you for pointing out the point that not every firehouse is like this, and not every culture is like this. Sorry, are you hearing that ding? I want to make sure you don't hear it. I apologize. Let me. Sorry. Let me. We can edit it. Sorry, I don't know how that's happening. I apologize.
You're good.
You there? Okay. Because not every firehouse is like that. Not every department's like that. I know, and I'm super proud of my department where we're at, because we've really been able to combat that, and it's been super amazing to be a part of that journey. But if you look at social media in general, right, there's a lot of negativity out there in social media about the fire service, and it's incredibly popular. Likes, the relikes, the reposts. I wish we would talk more about the positivity, because I truly believe we can manifest a little bit more of what we really want. And if we continue to focus on the negative and the negative and the negative, right, the byproduct will end up being that. Like, I want to get people excited about joining the fire service. I want to get people excited about firehouse culture. But I can't stop people from posting these things, because it's how they're feeling. So while I may want people to be more positive and talk more about the positivity and manifest the good stuff, these are real things that people are dealing with. And so you ask, like, what is going on? Like, how do we combat, how do we get less of these types of posts and more about the stuff that we're talking about here?
Well, it's like clickbait. Like, I've had so many great conversations and talking about great things, but as far as like the Instagram algorithm is concerned, they don't give a fuck about any of it. It's all about buzzworthy clickbait stuff, man. And we want the negative things that drive fear, that drive anger, and all this reaction stuff. I just had a post that we had put, and it was another engineer working for another big department, and he was saying basically, like, your ass is a number in the seat, and basically that was the clickbait. It grabbed so many views that almost, like, it's still going up to like 100,000 views right now. But it was so funny when him and I were talking about it, because the rest of the conversation had nothing to do with that. The rest of the conversation had all about like his story and how he had reached rock bottom, and it was like such a hilarious experience and how we had, got the clickbait clip, and then it derived all this anger within.
Right.
Oh, half derived anger, and then half of it was like, hey man, like I do feel like I've been a number for a very long time and it doesn't feel good. And so it's just very interesting the way our culture is just trying to drive the subconscious into states of control and fear. And just in general, man, there's a lot of bleeding hearts out there. And I think a lot of people who are in the first responder industry, their courage is hanging by a thread. And I'm speaking for my own department right now because a large department like mine, like we had the Palisades and our fire chief got fired and all this shit, man. All that was on the news, was on Instagram, and went global. It's like, it was so destructive to our culture because of how we're seen, and that affects us individually. It affects us culturally. It affects us in so many different ways we don't understand. And we're going through a large upheaval right now, and it's really hard to pick up the pieces. But what I want people to notice is that that same exact concept that I just explained was there's a lot of bleeding hearts out there. People coming here to serve, and through that service, they feel like they don't have anything left. There's nothing left for them because no one, they feel like they're being neglected. And that neglect, man, it's another core wound. And that shit hurts, man.
Yeah.
And when we deal with core wounds, dude, wounds take a long time to heal unless you just shove it down and you just become numb. And most of the gentlemen and the women I work with, they have walls around their hearts because of how much wounding there is just through administrative level. And that has, how else are we supposed to inhabit and acclimate to that? We put up walls, we protect ourselves. And then when we go home, we can't connect with our spouse. We can't connect with our children. And so that's kind of like what I've seen over time. And people who are carrying, just walking wounded, traumatic individuals, it takes a long time to break down those walls.
Right. I know exactly how you're feeling. I could talk about it from like a union perspective. Our organization has been through some, what I would say, organizational trauma, and we've had some really rough times with the city. And I remember as a union president, I remember being in negotiations and actually crying. And I'll say that, and it wasn't my best moment because I'm so emotionally just done. Right? I'm building my walls up. I can't take any more of this. Why are you not seeing me as a person? And why is this disconnect not happening? And over and over and over again. And it's one of the hardest things to deal with. And I would bring it home. My wife, like, maybe she just quit. Maybe she just not do the negotiations or the union stuff. And maybe she just focus on your job, but that's not who I am. That's not what I embody and what I believe. And for anybody who has felt that, I know it. I recognize it. I feel it. I revisit it from time to time. I encourage you to keep trying to build relationships, right? I think there are good people. Every position in the fire service is temporary. It is. And eventually that seat will get refilled and someone else will jump in. And yes, your position is temporary. And we are just a seat number at the end of the day. I'm borrowing this seat for 30 years. It wasn't mine before I got here. It's not going to be mine when I leave. No one's going to remember my name in 50 years. No one is. And unfortunately, that's the reality. But while I'm in this seat, I have to remember that my job is not about the seat itself. It's about the relationships that I build while in this seat and the people I impact while in this seat. And I think if you can hyper focus on that and trick your brain a little bit to believe that, just forget about the seat right now. The seat is just an arbitrary object that I sit on. What am I doing right now when I'm in the seat? The people I'm meeting at the firehouse, the family I'm making, the community members I'm impacting, the relationships I'm building every day outside the firehouse with the community, whatever it is, depending on the size of your department, maybe a battalion, maybe the full city. To me, that if you can start focusing on that, you will start to maybe rebuild some of those building blocks that have just been crushed by external forces that just don't understand what's happening in your dynamics of your world. That has helped me tremendously. I still struggle with it every day, but knowing that and keep putting myself out there to build relationships, it's really helped me get through this idea that, man, I'm just an R number. I'm just an R number, like a droid or a trooper number, and this is more than that.
Yeah, I'm curious, brother, like how you're carrying a heavy burden, like being a president of a union, and I'd love to hear your perspective on that and like how you look to shift like the culture in a way to where everyone feels like they are a part of the union in a sense and they have a voice because I hope our union members from our union listen to some of this because it's important and there's always this saying like around the kitchen table about go to the union, go to the union meetings because it really does matter. And I being a part of some of the union activities, I have noticed I learned about the politics and the understandings that go on with the union. It does help, but I really felt like the politics got so much, especially with the big department. It's really tough with politics. And whenever I see politics, man, I always think of Caesar because in the end, like Caesar got murdered by the other politicians within his realm. And it's a heavy burden to carry, man. So I'm really curious how you do that.
Oh man, with grace. So when I first got into the union, I was not a union president. I was another union executive board member. It was maybe about 7 years ago, and people were unhappy. Right, they were calling for Caesar's head, basically. And I had a different mentality. I was in the position that I wanted to promote at that time, and I kind of was leading with my heart, which is a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing because I can get really emotional. And I stepped up into a leadership role in the union when we were going through a very, very difficult time as an association. Very difficult. And it was a lot of battling and it was a lot of fighting. Would I say we won? I would say yes, we won. And the members felt like they won, but it came at a cost. It came at a crumbling. Everything crumbled. And I have spent the last X amount of years trying to rebuild relationships. I think post-COVID, our union dynamics have changed. I'm sure a lot of departments feel this way. Prior to COVID, our union, I would feel, was very strong because we would show up to meetings. There was more involvement. Then COVID hit. Everything went to Zoom meetings. Everything went to black screens and just listening to a meeting while you're doing something else with your family or you're out on the golf course or you're doing whatever, and you're just there, but you're not present. And I've slowly started to feel that we've become more of just an association that you just pay into, like an HOA, because I have to. And the dynamic now and the difficulty now is how do I build this back up because we have to take some ownership as union members. We call each other brothers and we call each other family, and we know each other's kids, and we ask them about, hey, how was you and your wife's anniversary, and how was your vacation? But yet, when it comes to the decision-making process within the union, we make a lot of selfish decisions. Here's a simple thing. I'm going to call out sick today. And instead of me just calling out sick and turning a blind eye and going to do whatever I thought I need to do, it could be super important. And yes, there are things outside the spectrum where you're just leaving and you got to go home. It's a family emergency and you go. But I'm going to make a conscious effort to maybe tomorrow I'm going to call out sick. Maybe pick up that phone and see who's on the list above you. On depending on beside your department, this person's going to get hit and they're not signed up. They're going to get manualed in. Maybe it's a phone call. Hey, I apologize. This is what's going on. You're going to get hit. I just want you to know, like, it was bring back the family aspect of the union, right? That right now, what I feel is the most difficult thing. And not only do I see it in my department, but I'm friends with a lot of union presidents and they all feel the same way. We've become more of an association based on dues and I want this, and where's my money, and where's my step increase, and that. But they're not participating and getting involved in the union, which is what initially created that family aspect that had strength and unity. That right now to me is the biggest issue that I see, and how hard it is.
Yeah, I mean, dealing with qualified relief is really tough. Each department deals with that, and understanding how one person has to get mandatory overtime, and if they don't want it, then it passes on to the next person. You're passing the buck, right? Based off a lack of responsibility and more from a place of self-interest. And we're dealing with that right now. And we're dealing with a complete unraveling of our own association, and it's tough to watch. But you know, a lot of times from a zoomed out perspective, things that do not operate very well fundamentally have to crumble. They have to be reset in order for something to be rebuilt with a new foundation. It's just how it works.
Mm.
And so I think a lot of associations dealt with a lot of this good old boys club that did things with these these under the table deals with politicians within the city, and then also within the politicians within the union associations. And that's really, I think a lot of people dealt with that, and people didn't understand how that went down. Now, as the sands of time are shifting within union groups, much more stuff is revealed. Number one, like technology, you cannot hide away and do these deals with technology around, because it's just going to come up. You can't hide from it. It's just no way. But as far as like qualified relief is concerned, like a lot of people, it's tough, man. I mean, we all want to go home, right? And none of us want to work abruptly off some surprise that day. You got to just stay, and you've been working already, and you're burnt out. You had no sleep, especially the busier stations. It's tough, dude. And it comes down to the point of like, let's understand also like how sleep affects us. Like that is so important and so valuable I don't know if you guys work 24-hour shifts. I'm assuming you guys
48.
do. What does it say, 48?
We're a 48 shift, yeah.
Okay, so that's tough, dude. I mean, if you're getting mandatory another shift.
And my engine company, we run almost 5,000 just on our engine a year. I mean, we're about 15 to 20 runs a day. For sure. And I agree, what you call it qualified or mando relief, you're right. Some systems they have to crumble to be rebuilt. I love the way you said that. But that still doesn't, I still challenge people to understand on the other receiving end of that, you could still not show up. You could still say, hey, I can't make it in, or I'm calling in sick, I have some family stuff. But there's still a person on the other side of that. And we talk about not just being another person in the seat, not just being another number on a sheet. That's still Mike that's going to get hit. I'm going to text Mike. Sorry, bud, dude, didn't mean to do this to you. Just bring back a little bit of that human nature, because that person, when they have to do it, will do the same. And you could take away mandatory. You could talk about union events. The amount of people showing up to union events right now has dwindled exponentially. I don't know if it's because the price of living in California, people have moved away from where I work. It's hard for them to come back in. They have young families, whatever that is. But that connection, and that's what's keeping us connected, is what will in turn create this powerhouse when we have to come together for something that's traumatic or something that's really a big deal, where we have to come together as a group and fortify things. But we can't do that if we're disconnected in the easy things.
Yeah, I agree, man. And it is really tough. So it is good to hear and refreshing to hear your perspective on it, because it hurts, man, when you feel like you're just a number and you're having to pick up picking up the extra slack, right? From when someone else has to feel like their stuff is more important than your stuff, right? And
your family's more important than my family.
Right. Yeah. And like you're, I like the idea of like what's implicit and explicit. And so like, let's understand what's explicit, right? We have these sayings, and like, you shall do this in writing, right? Or there's going to be consequences. And so we base all of our decisions based off that explicitity. And there's also things like that are implicit, the laws of the firehouse. And you have to kind of maneuver your way around those hidden laws. And that only comes through time and experience, the way you can understand that shit. And so, like, as the explicit is like, shut up and go to work. You're becoming a tool and not a teammate. Like that shit hurts. You know what I mean? But that comes with consequences in writing, literally. And so we base our decisions based off just avoiding the consequences. And so a lot of our decision making is now being derived off of reward versus punishment. And so as we make our decisions based off reward versus punishment, we take that into our personal lives. Now, I will try to avoid conflict. It's something that I don't like to do when I'm at home. And so when I do that, then a lot of stuff turns into resentment between my wife and myself. So it affects my relationship. But I look at the reward versus punishment because I've taken years of that explicit, you shall, and I've learned a learned behavioral trait that now plays into my home. And so let's just understand the rules and the laws of just reward versus punishment, understand how it affects not just us in the fire station, but how it affects us in behaviorally. And I think a lot of us also understand like our individuality and how we make decisions based off of like guilt sin. That's another core wound, how we believe that we must work our way to heaven, like then things like that. And like that's how I was raised. So a lot of my decisions are based off of how I make decisions from guilt and
Mhm.
shame. And like that's how it's affected me. I didn't mean to really bring like religion into this, but
No.
it's just like this really important foundational set points how we can make better decisions and realize what's running our life.
So with the explicit, we can't control almost.
Right.
Explicit, we can't control. And when we talk about controlling our controllables, do you feel in your position, and you've talked to a lot of people through your platform and through your organization, do you feel like we're doing a good job of controlling our implicits?
You know what, man? Sometimes it is what it is, and you gotta eat the shit stick. However, it is our job as an embodiment to change that. We change the culture through our actions and how we embody things. So, like the culture is very strange, right? And there's these implicit uh rules, right? And if we change them, we cause some type of disarray and distorted I guess conflict. And so it depends on how you approach the conflict. Like for instance, the guys are tired, or the men and women are tired, right? I like saying the guys just because it is what it is. It's how we say things. So if we're working our asses off, we get ran to the grave last 3 nights, right? No one's had sleep. Everyone's working overtime. We're stuck at the station. And the captain decides to do a 7:30 a.m. lineup. Is that's based off his own decision, and is that something that's implicit because we have to show up there, right? And listen to whatever the captain says. That comes from the captain reading the room, understanding what's going on, and having some type of emotional intelligence, some type of empathy towards the lack of sleep and how we're all working. And so these are just like some small examples and nuances how we can shift our perspective just based off of biology. Lack of sleep, stress, wherever you feel like shit, you're not going to have great workers. So these are just kind of like small examples. I hope that
It does.
speak to everyone.
I think it ties directly back into leadership. And I want to make sure I'm hearing this right.
Give me 1 sec. I got to charge my laptop.
Go for it. Go for it.
All right, go ahead.
Let me just cut this. Sorry. I was going to say, I want to make sure I hear this right, because we're talking about the explicit, the implicit. The explicit is that you guys have been worked all day. You can't control how much sleep you're getting. You can't control the calls you're going on. But the implicit is that officer's decision to do a 7:30 a.m. lineup. I think it ties directly into leadership, right?
Yeah.
How are we taking care of each other? How is that officer looking at the dynamics of the explicit and saying, what can I do right now to be the stopgap? What can I do to be like, hey, everyone, don't turn off your alarm clocks. Like turn off your alarm clocks. We'll wake up to run calls, but let's gather up. Let's say everyone get an extra hour of sleep, whatever it is, right? I think that is the privilege of promotion. That is the privilege of formal leadership. You're creating an environment where people are like, man, my cap gets me. Oh, thank God my cap's cool right now. That to me that correlates directly to the union stuff. That correlates directly to the firehouse stuff. That correlates directly to the human side of this job. There are so many explicit factors that we have no control over in this job, operationally and administratively. I can't stop that we have to do 30 inspections by this date. I can't stop that we ran 52 calls in 48 hours because it was a busy time. Like those are explicit factors that I have no control over as an officer. It's going to suck. We're going to embrace the suck. You said eat the shit stick. It's the same thing. But the company officer needs to not be about positivity. And again, I love Simon. It's about optimism. Totally different. Blind positivity is not leadership, because that'd be like that officer saying, okay, so what? We didn't sleep for 3 days. Everybody, you're gonna be fine, right? You're taking away my feelings. You're making me feel small. You're feeling like I'm not valued. But imagine if that officer was optimistic instead of positive. Calculated optimism. Man, that absolutely sucked last night. But hey, we're going to take care of each other today. Let's sleep in a little bit. Let's make sure the rig's checked in, but then go hide out in your room for a couple hours. Let's do a workout. Make sure we'll grab some coffee later. Maybe we'll move training to the afternoon, and we're just going to get through this day. Calculated optimism now changes the complete dynamic of that firehouse that day. And that's what I kind of mean by controlling our implicits. And I think that's what officers and formal leaders can be doing to maybe change that dynamic in the firehouse. The people who are struggling and are going through some dark times, the people who are struggling at home or struggling feeling valued in their organization, a lot of explicit things being brought into the firehouse. How are you as a leader and how are you as an officer going to make the implicit in your control? That is what I want people to take away from this, you know?
Oh, it's beautiful, man. Very, very well put. And it just shows, and this example comes from experience, man. I've dealt with that where the officer feels his authority is met when he makes certain decisions like that, where no one has control over it. You have to do it. And if you don't listen, then you're going to get some backlash, right, from your superiors. And so I just, I just hope people can understand as these older generations are retiring right now. That's really what we're seeing. I guess all these baby boomers, they're leaving, right? And so there's just a shift happening where these other men and women are stepping into the seat, right, of leadership. And so this is a very healthy conversation where we can hear like just what we've seen over the years and what we hold more value in, and how we can understand like the dynamics of what's actually happening, what's happened to us. And we want to change things for the better, especially for that newer generation that's coming up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what I really want to talk about as well, is the newer generation. It's different, man. These younger members, they're working up to 5 years and they're like, I've had enough of this 5 years. I'm out, you know? And so we're seeing a lot of that. And we're also seeing like those members also will go to other departments because they don't like this certain department, the way the culture is, especially LA City, because of the way we treat each other. And so because we overtrain, we train all the time. We don't just train on the weekends. We train during the week all the time. And it's exhausting, man. And we're one of the busiest departments in the nation. So not to say that we shouldn't train, but a lot of these members feel that during the training, it's not a great learning environment. There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of expectations that are very high. And I feel like there is a lot of grief in that. So members are out. And so with that, these younger generations, they have a different way of making decisions with themselves. And that it's turned into a lot of like, I've got mine, man. Fuck everyone else. I'm not a team player. I'm just here for the paycheck. That's really what I've seen it turn into. And so, you know, how do we change and shift that? And a lot of it too is like we're built on technology now. So a lot of us are the younger generations. It's, you know, myself included. I'm on my phone often, and so a lot of that that continuity, that mending of the tapestry has been severed through individuality and through separateness, as opposed to having a cohesive unit.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack there. So I challenge everybody hearing this. That individual that walks away saying, I got mine, I got my paycheck. It's hard for me to believe that that's how they felt when they first got into the job. Now, I think some you may be catered to just being naive. The job isn't what they say it is. But I do believe that for the most part, the majority of people who get into this job do not have that mentality. So what's creating that? That, you know, is it the dynamics of the fire service in general? Is it the organizational trauma? Is it the firehouse individual culture? I think that's the first question that everyone has to ask. And it has to start with ownership. I don't think I'm the best company officer there is ever in the world that stepped into the fire service. I know everything. I'm maintaining my growth mindset. But every time that someone on my crew feels that way, I have to be like, okay, where did I mess up? What am I not giving you that's making you feel this way? I don't think we're doing that. I don't know if I can't speak for everybody. Maybe some people are like, Mike, what you're talking about is normal business. We do this all the time. And then God bless you. You're way ahead of me. But I don't feel like that's happening a lot.
Mm-mm. Not at all.
And so I talk about this younger generation. Like, I think there's some dynamics you have to understand. I think you brought up technology. This idea that no cell phones, you can't do it. We all have our cell phones. Let's learn how we can use this to this advantage. Now, that backseat better not be in their phone on their way to a structure fire, heads down texting while I need them heads up, doing their thing. But I'm okay if they have their cell phone. I understand it. This whole, if you need to make a phone call, go to your bedroom BS that we did from like 1970s when there was a payphone in the station. Like we have to adapt to that end. But I think we have to earn our way out of the relationship, if that makes sense. And I'll expand on it. And I was just talking to another officer about this. I had an officer reach out to me from across the country just to talk leadership. Didn't want to buy the course. We were just like, hey, I want to throw something about you leadership-wise. And I was like, what's up? He's like, I'm struggling. I'm a new officer. I have a really senior guy who's on his way out. He seems like he's disengaged. And then I have a brand new probationary firefighter that's struggling right now. And my dynamic is I have to help the junior guy, work with the senior guy. I'm struggling. The senior guy is just, he wants out. I'm like, okay. And I said, you have to earn your way out of the relationship. He's like, what do you mean by that? I said, you never want to go through something and at the end of it say, I wish I did more, or what if? I think you have to earn your way out of this relationship with individuals that are struggling. You have to walk away feeling like you gave them everything you possibly could give them before they leave. Mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever. When they leave the conversation, they leave the firehouse, they leave the crew. It doesn't necessarily be physically. So what do I need to give that person who's 5 years, who's just like, I have a paycheck, I have got mine. I'm mentally checking out of this. I'm just coming in for a paycheck and I'm going to go do my thing. I cannot be okay with that. I have to earn my way out of that relationship. What am I not giving you, and what can I give you more to re-engage you back into the fight? I just don't know that we're doing that. I think we're just using this arbitrarily. That's just that generation. That generation just doesn't get it. That generation is just all about Instagram and social media, and they're not into the firehouse culture. I think that's a cop-out. I challenge everybody to dig a little deeper and be like, what am I not giving you that you need? What is so attractive out there that you're not finding here in the dynamic of what we call a brotherhood, a family? What's missing? I think if we start to do that a little more, we're not going to capture everybody, but maybe at every 5, we're going to pluck 2 or 3 back into it.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense to approach it like that. But you're also meeting someone where they're at, which is really important. And I think one of the big things too is like I don't engage at the fire station depending on what level I am connecting with someone. Like a lot of times there's a lot of small talk at the station. You know what I mean? Like, oh, the weather is kind of crazy today. It's hot. You know what I mean? It's like that shit drives me nuts, dude. I hate small talk. And so I just won't engage, and that's just me. But I seek to connect on a deeper level. And so I make a general assumption and make an algorithm based on each person on how I'm going to connect with them, just based off like my own intelligence of where I've been in the station, maybe like 3 years. And I understand people that way. So I know my audience. And that's like the biggest thing too, is like understand your audience, right? And so a lot of time, and I'm working at a station where we have, individuals from ages, guys about to retire to very young member in his early 20s and all in between. And so it's just a very strange algorithm of what you're working with. Like, let's just say this, like the fire department and the fire station is an arena of human behavior. And so your ability to understand human behavior, you better adapt and conform to that, because that is part of your emotional intelligence. That's your duty to understand that. And if you don't, man, you'll get chewed up and spit out immediately. And so that's kind of like uh the conversation around these younger members is you have to connect with them. Like once I started connecting with the younger members, it's hilarious the way they think. And I
Yeah.
find it just I kind of like more fun than I did as far as judgment goes, because that's when I started working on my ability to judge others. It's like judgment is just a vice, dude. And that vice starts gripping harder and harder internally on your own self. And the harder you judge others, the harder you really judge yourself. It's just a mirror, right? But like I I'm just speaking for the masses here. Like we judge really hard in the firehouse. It is
Yeah.
what it is. And like we have to look at that. That hurts, man. Like when we have an overtime guy coming in the station, like we immediately judge him. It's like a zoo of like wild animals, like a bunch of apes, just like it's like seeing who's the alpha, right? You look immediately to find the alpha in the room. You just got to do it. It is what it is. But we want to get past that. We want to move past like the zoo and the archetypes of just like apes and like the way we handle things as beasts. We want to be a little bit more intelligent with that. And start with your judgment, man. And I still judge. Like I'm not fucking perfect. I have horns holding up this halo, dude. And it's like I judge so much. However, like that shit hurts me. In the end, I'm only hurting myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly the dynamic. I think you listed it. I think you can't. I think there's only a few times where you could probably categorize something as global. And what you said, I bet you everybody listening's like, that's my firehouse. That's my firehouse.
Exactly.
That's my neighbor's firehouse. And you're right. I think, but good for you for attempting to connect. I think that's all you can do. What do you call it? I mean, it's that simple. Am I making an effort to connect? Yes, I'm going to be judgy. Yes, we're human beings. Yes, we run through these emotions. And yes, you said it's a halo, horns holding up a halo. I love that. But at the end of the day, you're still trying to connect. And then hopefully on the other receiving end of that is another person saying, I just want to connect too. Now there's going to be a disconnect. You're not going to get them all. And I think I'm okay with that. But I'm okay knowing as an officer when I go to bed or when I get off my 4-day that I made that environment tenable inside the firehouse for everybody to want to be there and operate at their very best. But you're right. Some people are just not going to get it. I don't think it's any different than somebody on their way out on the senior side. But you talked about hierarchy. You talk about hierarchy of needs. You talk about this zoo mentality, this gang mentality where the person coming in is the newbie and they got to earn it all creates this dynamic. But good for you for trying to connect. I wish more people would try to connect. And I want to preface this for everybody. I think standards are standards. Mm-hmm. My job is not to motivate you. My job is to empower you to want to perform at your very best. And I will give you that as an officer. My promise to you when you walk in is I will give you an environment where you want to operate at your very best. You're going to want to train. You're going to want to have laughs. You're going to want to go out and have coffee. You're going to want to do all these things. I will give that to you. But it is still your job to meet me halfway on that, to come into the arena that I've created for you and enjoy the process. And if that still doesn't work, then, that's when we have these other discussions. Okay, maybe this place isn't for you, or maybe this job isn't for you, because we don't live in isolation. Our job is, we're not sitting in a vehicle by ourselves. This job is based on community. It's based on family. It's inherently the type of job we do. So I want to preface that while you're still trying to connect and do all these things, just know you still have to hold the standards. Your job isn't to motivate them. Your job isn't to force them at the dinner table. Your job is to set the plate for them at the dinner table and say, dinner's ready. Come eat with us. Come be a part of this family. But I'm not going to force you into that dinner table.
Yeah, man. And when you instill some type of change that is against the culture, even though there's like these hidden laws that we are aware of, right? Like just do it with some type of intelligence and precision. Like I can give an example, like the way I do things. Like I'm seen as a threat sometimes because of the way I challenge the current narrative. However, I don't come in as a preacher telling you this is what I do, you should do it too. And a good example is how I eat. Like I don't eat all the fire station food because it's awful and it makes me sick. It makes me feel like I have brain fog. It makes me feel distended. So a
Okay.
good example is I don't eat gluten. Now, I made this decision a really long time ago. And when someone just cooks a gluten heavy meal, I don't expect someone to want to meet my own standards because of a personal choice I've made. So a good example is I worked an overtime shift at a different station. This guy cooked like the worst fucking meal I've had at the fire station. And I was just like, I looked at what he was cooking. And I was like, I'm not eating that. I'm grabbing something else. And the look on everyone's faces when I took my food from an outside source and ate it in front of everyone was like they were shocked because I challenged a narrative of someone's personal choices that are not the best.
Right.
So, but the thing is like I don't expect someone to try to match what I'm doing, but I just do it with my own autonomy, and which I was talking about before. And when I used to just succumb to eating fire station food, and I would feel awful, but like, dude, why am I doing this to myself? And I just made a clear decision with myself, like I'm not going to do that again because I feel terrible after, only to try to gain the affection and the acceptance of others in a station.
So let me ask you something, and I'm gonna ask them. Did that person did normally work with you?
No, this is a totally new crew, all young members at a different
Okay.
station.
Okay. And do they ask you like, hey, you got any dietary needs? When we typically do that now, there's so many, we have different health kicks and everyone's on different programs and I respect it. And so some people have different. So I just think about your story, right? And I don't know who this firefighter is. And I don't know, maybe it was a mistake. And sometimes, they just they didn't ask and they didn't know, what was going on. I don't like the judgment part on the back end because in my house, I have one person that doesn't eat beef, can't eat beef, has some type of allergy and has an allergy to dairy. And so when everybody cooks, we all know that that person in our house does not eat it. And we all either make a separate salad for him, or if we're doing steaks for dinner, we do a chicken breast. But we make the effort to set the table for him to come enjoy dinner with us. Here's my problem with what you said. It's not the fact that they cooked you a meal that you couldn't eat. That's totally fine. I messed up. Don't know you. Apologize. Can I make you something else? No, don't worry. I'm just going to eat something different. My problem is the back end of it. Because if we were at home right now and my spouse says, "Hey, I'm not eating gluten. It gives me an allergy or whatever," I'm not going to not make her that and then talk shit about her not eating gluten. But yeah, I call that a family at home. But then when I'm in the firehouse and it happens, we do the exact opposite. That to me is the dynamic that I'm uncomfortable with. Why are we treating each different? That is the stuff that maybe starts driving people away from the fire service, driving people away from the firehouse culture. We should be adapting to meet the needs of our brothers and sisters. Why not? We call each other a family. We say we want to take care of each other. We want to break bread with each other. And then the moment you make a decision, you're an outsider. That is what I have a problem with.
Yeah, this is just like a simple example, you know what I mean,
Sure.
of challenging a current narrative because and the thing is too, like you can do it gracefully or you can shove it in someone else's face. I tend to do it with much more grace because I don't expect people to match my decision making, and it's just like the current narrative, is just like with the culture and it comes with like the laws of that culture as well. So like for instance, like I've worked at other stations where I was assigned and everyone listened to country. And I was like, dude, I don't like country music. And that bothers people because I don't match with their culture. And so I just challenge the narrative a little bit. And so, but when that happens, it's just kind of it's very simple and hilarious. And what I'm trying to do is to teach how your own individualness and your own autonomy is so important. It brings value to the fire station and it brings diversity to the fire station. And we all speak about diversity with trying to hire individuals, but we're only talking about skin color here. We're trying to bring in more so of like your autonomy based off your own decisions and how effective that is on the fireground and not just on the fireground, but within the firehouse. And so what I'm trying to give here is leading with openness and leading with your ability to not be stifled and snuffed out because you feel fear of a lack of acceptance within a tribe. Because one of the biggest things that hurts the most is when you're not accepted into a tribe.
Yeah.
And when you're outcasted and you're shunned, which I've seen, that shit hurts, man. If you're on the back end of that, it's happened to me before, and like it's happened. I've seen it happen to other people, and it's you get thrown in with the wolves, man. At certain assignments, it's tough.
You just, I never even thought of it like that, because we wear the same boots, same uniform, we're in the same lounge chairs. Everything that we do, for the most part, explicitly, is identical in any fire department. Same shirts, right? Same everything, right? Even haircuts sometimes are exactly the same, probe your buzz cutted, right? But we rarely get the opportunity to from the implicit side, project our uniqueness internally. And sometimes it's suppressed. And the moment it was like a aha moment that you just said right there. We talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I'm a huge fan of. Especially like me, I was not brought up into the fire service as culture. It's just not part of my culture. I didn't know much about it. I became a firefighter by accident. And, I'm not everything from, there's so much about me that's different. And the ability to be able to, what's made me, and maybe it's just because I've worked with some really good officers, I always was started with yes. Who I was always got a response of yes when I asked to do something, because it was who I was. And I think I was just fortunate enough to have these good officers that allowed me to express who I was as an individual, which kind of shaped who I am today. And so I'm thankful for that. And I guess it's just my goal is to then pass that on to the next generation. It's kind of like what you're saying. I'm hearing what you're saying, and I can hear the trauma, excuse me for speaking for you, that you feel. I don't care if it's just country music or it's just a gluten-free meal. These little microaggressions put together over a course of a 3, 5, 7-year phase, you can understand why they're like, I'm just here for the paycheck. I'm going to bounce out. So I hear what you're saying, and I'm kind of moved by it, because it's like an aha moment for me. And I think what you're doing now is very, very powerful, because you're telling a story, whether it be out of anger, frustration, empathy, whatever your emotions that are bringing each story. There is somebody who's listening to this podcast, or who will listen to it in the future, that's going to be like, I'm making dinner tomorrow. Maybe I'll ask my crew. Hey, maybe I'm going to ask the guys what they're going to listen to music. Maybe 7:30 roll call, I'm going to hold off till 8. And you're creating some real impact. And unfortunately, it came from your experiences, which had a negative tone. But man, good for you, and thank you, because these are the moments where I'm going to walk away right now tomorrow as an officer when I get back on shift, and I'm going to think about some of these things. So good for you. I just want to put that out there.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and it comes from like just speaking openly about this stuff. A lot of people are afraid to talk about it, man. A lot of people are so afraid of speaking up and being a yes man or a people pleaser. That pattern of behavior does not instill great leadership.
Right.
That being a yes man and just taking it hard from the chief, right? Instead of having your own autonomy and speaking your voice, like that stuff matters. That's going to create bigger change and bigger ripple effects within the department. And I also want to speak on the fact that there is also this really strange disconnect between ranking officers and then the chief officers. There's something really strange going on there with that rank, because a lot of individuals, I would say, under that rank of the chief officers, everyone feels like there is a complete disconnect from them, except for those who like really act like they care. And because it's changed into a political regime once you get to that level, because they got to look at a bigger picture administratively, no doubt. I mean, they have to, and they have to follow under whoever's the most in charge, the chief. And then that chief is following under a city council or members in the political regime who give you money. So I always say, follow the money and you'll follow the truth. And if we're making decisions just based off us wanting to get money, then we're out of the game as far as continuity within other members. And that's really where the administrative betrayal starts. So a lot of these council members, they don't understand anything about the fire department. All they understand is numbers, and all they understand is legalities. And so all they see is the worst shit that comes up on their table with someone who acted out of place, or they see the numbers that come up. Hey, you're not meeting these time frames for getting to this this child who had a full arrest. So that's all they see. However, in between all that, what we're seeing is like this brokenness and shattered pieces of fragmented selves who put out service. And so why would we want to risk ourselves even more and risk our lives even more when we feel like we're just a number in that scale? And so I think this is a really important topic because of every agency feels this, man. And all of these administrative members who are making these decisions, these political decisions, it's coming from like these kingpins, man, who sit in these chairs and make these decisions when they know nothing about what we do until we start speaking about it from a heartfelt experience.
Yeah, that is a lot right there. Um, yeah, I just want to say a couple of things. First, you talked about the disconnect between the chief's officer and the company officer rank. I do think I'm very fortunate, and I don't want you to feel bad that I'm saying this, but I'm fortunate that I right now work for a chief officer who is very much empowering his company officers to create a dynamic in which there is complete communication between the officers and the chief officers. And I think he's doing it because where he came from as an organization, he saw some of the stuff maybe that you're discussing. And I've experienced both sides of that. And so from right now, what I'm experiencing is, I don't want to say the exact opposite, but I want to say, and I'm a smaller organization, so on the political side, I don't deal with as much as what some of the stuff you're talking about, and I wish I could talk more about that. But there is a disconnect, and right now we are working towards bridging that through constant communication. And you're right. I do think it's incredibly difficult on the administrative side and the chief officer rank to maintain a pulse of the fire department, i.e. boots on the ground, while also having a vision of what the expectation is outside of the walls of the firehouse, city hall, other dynamics. And I have tried as a union president that the only time that I reach out, I don't want the only time that I reach out to my chief officers is when I have something negative that I have to discuss with them. Because it's like what you just said. We constantly, they're constantly looking at it. They're looking at a whole different vantage point than I'm looking at. I'm definitely in the first person, and they're in the third, and they're looking at the dynamics of this compared to that in the 30,000 foot view. And I think it's very difficult. Give some grace to anybody who's struggling with this. Give yourself some grace. It is a difficult dynamic. But then again, I ask you, and I challenge the viewers. I love how you said explicit versus implicit. This is all explicit.
Yeah, it is.
The world could be crumbling around my firehouse tomorrow. Administratively, I could be in the newspaper. This could be going on. That could be going on. But when those app bay doors close, there is isolation. Mm. And you have control of that firehouse. I think maybe it's Brene Brown. I don't know who says it, but you bring the weather. Right? You can control that. I think what you're talking about is very true. I experienced it every day. There is organizational trauma, administrative trauma, the ass of this, the feeling like this, feeling like that, but then the app bay doors close, and whatever. It's me, my captain, before I promoted, and my engine and my medic. It's just us at the kitchen table. That's our controllable right there. So how am I now as an officer knowing that dynamic? How am I going to shield and make that day good for them knowing all this stuff's going on in the exterior? I have wasted so much energy and so much emotion and so much time away from my wife and my kids, not crying, but yes, crying, but emotionally vesting so much of what I have today and energy into a controllable that I can't control and having little effect on the outcome. I've wasted it. It's gone. And I have matured to a position where now I realize I'm just going to control my controllables. I am. I'm not going to worry about it. Is my crew happy to be at work today? Do they feel empowered? Are they excited to maybe grab coffee at 3:00? Do they want to go train? Or is the cab of the rig silent? Is the drive back from the call silent? That is all I can control as an officer. And if we can get that, if we can get the cab of the engine right, you're going to get the firehouse right. And that's, I think, to me, that's what I take from what you're saying is there's a lot going on. There's a huge disconnect, sure. Admin may be this, sure. Everybody has different firehouse. Everyone has different fire department, different dynamics, different political ties. But the firehouse is the same. The app bay's door goes up and down. There's a kitchen, there's a gym, there's bedrooms, there's a laundry room. It's all the same. So how can we control that? Because that's what we have control over.
Yeah, man. You're saying all the right things. Yeah, no, I just I posed a lot of these words and hit some of these points around things that people want to hear, but what I'm trying to do is stir something inside of you to just remind you of what's most important.
Right.
And what Mike's saying right now is that what's most important is the walls within your fire station, and the walls around your heart. And so coming from a sense of sovereignty within yourself and working within the warrior's heart. What the warrior's heart is when you can walk through your life having nothing to fear, nothing to hide, and being open within yourself and walk with a state of trust. That is how you want to live your life. Is it easy? Hell no, man. And the life will challenge you as soon as you set those intentions to live your life like that. However, the moment you start to act like that, and I like to call it ACT, live your life with ACT, because if you listen to this and you try to set intentions and stuff, none of it matters unless you put it into action. ACT. You got to act right in order to instill these qualities. You got to act right in order for someone to respect you. You got to act right in order for yourself to be a leader in your life at home and on the job. And so what I want people to understand is, like, I'm mentioning a lot of these things because I want people to, a lot of it is neglected. A lot of people don't talk about some of it. And so I understand that Mike's working from a heart-centered space. A union president who comes into tears, tears is not weakness. It's an activation of someone who can be open with themselves and vulnerable, and that allows you to do the same. That's a true leader. And what I want people to understand is, like, as a man, to do something like that takes great courage. As someone who's worked on themselves that much in order to shed a tear for others, that's true humility. That's true respect and reverence for the people he works with and for the people he's standing in leadership for. And so I really want people to understand and listen to really understand with great sovereignty. Like, it's up to you. No one's going to do it for you. You got to do it yourself. And this job is a great service. It is a great service. However, if you get locked in and just lost in translation of it, it'll eat you up and spit you out, man, in the cogwheel of the machine. So remember that you're more than that, and remember that this life is it's not just about just being a firefighter. So just remember that. And so hopefully that was a lot to kind of compact, brother, for you and your leadership role.
That was amazing. I wish everybody could replay that soundbite for themselves. Seriously, I think that was perfect.
So I am curious, brother. As you move forward, what are some pointers you give on states of leadership as far as, like, younger members looking to promote? What's some advice as someone who's not quite ready yet, but looking to advance later in their career?
I think that's a good question. I think there's a couple things you can do, and I don't think these are the end all be all, but the first thing is a realization, a self-ownership that you are jumping into a form of leadership the moment you get off probation. And some are in probation. For people who understand the dynamics of the firehouse, you're typically off probation. You are then given a probationary firefighter very short after, and you have to take on this role of the senior, whether it be a year to 5 years. And that is really where informal leadership starts. The test will take care of itself. I know that the test is a big deal. There are people out there that will help you with the test. I'm one of them. I have built a program that will help you with the test. Sure. But the test is finite. What I want you to understand that while you take this test, your responsibility is to the people. And when I mean people, I mean the firehouse and outside the firehouse. And that starts with you really having a growth mindset and understanding that this job is just more than rock music and first do fires. It just is. There's so much more.
Yeah.
It's about people. It's about grace. It's about empathy. And I know people are gonna like, that's soft. We don't talk about that stuff. That's soft. Yeah, well, that's the truth. Soft or not, we're getting the firehouse wrong. And the ones that are getting the firehouse right, I think, are the people that have embodied that everybody has a seat at that table. And everybody needs to be included in the conversation. And I think if you keep that in mind as a young person who's growing in the ranks, who starts to become a senior firefighter, who maybe starts to think about promotion and starts to put their mind in that formal leadership role, I think if you keep that in mind, you can't go wrong. I had a captain tell me this all the time. He says, if you're consistent in your character, you're consistent in your like growth mindset, if you're consistent in your care for people, and you're consistent in your empathy for the group, people will always forgive occasional mistakes. And they will, because they know deep down inside where your heart is and where and who you are as an individual and as an officer. Please just remember, the test is finite. The seat is infinite. The people are infinite. And I think if you have that headspace, man, you're going to crush it. You're going to make mistakes, but you're going to crush it. When you look back at your career and you look back at the people you've worked with, the officer that was my officer prior to this, me promoting, is one of my best friends. Hands down. And the crew that we were together are still best friends. I would put us against any other person operationally. But what we got right was the firehouse. If you get the firehouse right, I think everything else falls into place.
Yeah, thank you for that, man. A really good friend of mine had told me, like, when you're heard, truly heard, you grow in confidence.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, hearing others, like truly hearing others and listening is a skill, man. And I'm speaking from experience as a peer supporter. And when you're dealing with crisis and trauma and all these things, right? Like, you really, if you don't listen, if someone feels like you're not listening to them, you're not going to be a helpful tool in the situation, right? And like, it's really difficult, man. This job comes with a lot of burnout, dude. I've been burnt out so many times, man, and it just sucks. And so everyone needs to pay attention to what burnout looks like for each individual person. It shows its face in so many different ways, and it's an important piece in this conversation to witness burnout within yourself first and know all the clues and the cues of how it shows up.
Right.
Before, I used to show up through my substance abuse until I realized, like, I was just fucking numbing myself into oblivion. And so a lot of members who are silent and don't want to speak their voice anymore, or don't feel like their voice is heard, a lot of that is coming from a state of burnout. Like, man, my voice doesn't matter. What's the point of even saying anything? Like, that stuff that weighs on you over time, and it creates another layer of burnout over time. It's not just the call volume. The calls that come up and the things that happen that just break someone, it's not the isolated incident that broke someone. It was the stuff leading up to that. So we have to pay attention to those things and how they affect each individual. It's a series of events. The death of 1,000 paper cuts is what we're seeing now. And so burnout, man, just pay attention when you're like drinking beers with the boys and stuff, and playing that role. Listen to each other. It doesn't have to come up to beers with the boys. It can be more than that. And so I just want people to just pay attention to burnout. It happens, man. And burnout's gonna happen. It's gonna happen regardless. But it's about containment with burnout. Learning containment is so important because it increases the threshold at which burnout actually succeeds and starts to inhabit your life. It's really like a disease, right? It's a hidden disease and an illness. And when someone's at that state, it's really hard to pull them out of it because in the end, they can only help themselves. And it leads to someone really like going down to the very end of like suicide ideation, substance abuse. And most of what I see, like as a peer supporting member, like we deal with the worst case scenarios now, and like that's all we deal with. Yeah, we don't do the preemptive things to keep burnout from happening, like overtraining, lack of sleep. How's your diet? How do you treat your body with functional movement, not just isolated exercises? Um, when you overtrain, you have to know that you have to have an exponential amount of rest that balances that out. So, and this comes from me being an athlete as well. Like when I would overtrain, dude, I would get burnt out. I would get sick because my body would be like, "Hey, we've had enough. You can't do anymore." So, I'm very curious on your perspective on burnout, especially as a union member,
Mhm.
and how it's not just like like when you're at EMT school and you read the first like symptoms of burnout. You know what I mean? It's more than that.
Yeah. Burnout is real. I have faced it myself. I have seen it as I always joke that my office is like, we don't just deal with the working, working wages and living conditions. Like I feel like I have become, and I want to become that voice that people can come talk to and complain and vent. And I hear all about it as from the union side. We're just too small of an organization for me to just have union hours and only deal with wages, right? That's just not the dynamics of my job. So I think burnout's real. I felt it. And I've seen everything from the spectrum of I'm just tired to the stuff you just talked about. It's a real thing. I believe, and I go back to this, it's about optimism and it's not about positivity. Because so let's say you come to me and you say, I'm burnt out. And I go to you, what are you talking about? Man, you got 5 hours of sleep. You got a good job. You got to pay. You don't like this job? Go do something else. Go sling a hammer and nails over there across the street. I'm trying to get you to be positive about the job you have, when in fact, I'm making it worse. I'm discrediting how you feel. A company officer can have calculated optimism, acknowledge the burnout, listen with the intent of listening. Not this whole, hey, what do you need today? Because that's what we always say. Hey, what do you need today? But are you really listening to what they need today? Are you listening to what they're feeling? What's going on at home? I talk about, there's always an undercurrent. I teach this in my course. When you have difficult conversations with somebody, two things have to happen. One, the more difficult the conversation, the less speaking you have to do and the more listening. The second thing you have to do is you have to start looking for the undercurrent. What are you expressing is one thing, but what's the undercurrent beneath it that's causing those emotions? You may be lashing out during training because you're tired and F this and F that. Why are we doing this? There's an undercurrent behind that. What's causing that burnout undercurrent? A good leader listens and looks for both of those. And when you find that, you transition to calculated optimism. You have them for 24 or 48 hours. They're in your responsibility. They're in your care. How do I give you enough optimism that we're going to embrace the suck? We understand the sucks. And we're going to do what we can for this 48 or 24-hour window to make you get a little bit better and start recharging your battery so that burnout window closes. I think as an officer, that is my sole job when it comes to personality and personnel issues. I am yours for 48 hours. When the tones go off, my direction's at the community. But inside the firehouse, my goal is you for 48 hours. It could be dealing with burnout for 48 hours. It could be dealing with happiness. It could be that today's just a workout at whatever it is. But you have to assess that as the officer and you have to address that burnout.
Yeah, thank you for that. That was really great. And yeah, man, it's a big issue. I don't know if you guys have dealt with a lot of mental health stuff
Yeah,
in
we
your
do.
own
We have a
department.
huge support team right now. It's exponentially growing every day.
Mhm.
It's 50-50 though. Some people really like it and some people absolutely hate it. I'll be honest, I border the line. And I don't border the line out of disrespect. I think part of it is my own ego. I'm very much all emotions and all feels. I also feel like sometimes it's so overwhelming that it's just too much. Um, I don't like to feel things are forced upon me, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like if I'm tired today, sometimes I just want to be okay that I'm tired and I don't want it to be a condition that I'm having. And sometimes I think and I think this is normal. We have before this, the pendulum was here. And in response to what I would call an epidemic that we're facing as a fire service, the pendulum has hard swung the other way.
Mhm.
I think it will settle. So this is just growing pains, and I'm allowing it to happen, and I'm experiencing it because everybody has the intention of good. No one's trying to mess you up on purpose. No one's trying to force anything on you. They're just so concerned that we're just learning how to do this. We're learning of the balance of peer support and mental health and the check-ins and how the check-ins and what forced training we're sending you to. And what are we doing here? And until we find that balance, this is just the growing pains. I think that's what we're in right now. I'm super empowered and so proud of the group that's made up our peer support team. When I had my tragic loss in our family, the 17-year-old, it was a simple text. Hey, Mike, what's going on? Just want to check in. That was all I needed.
Mhm.
I didn't need a flyer. I didn't need someone to say, I just needed that text. And just the wherewithal of that text changed my entire outlook on that thing.
Mm.
So I love it.
Yeah, I think one of the main components of like kind of the mental health crisis is chronic pain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like we deal with so much chronic pain. You go to like a fire station, you're like, "Hey, man, do any of you guys have chronic pain?" Like, I would say most of the individuals say, "Yeah, you know, like my back is bugging me yesterday, and like my knees bother." It's all these injuries that we've had over the years, you know, and so I think that's really one of the answers. I put a lot of emphasis on that, and I've actually made a presentation on chronic pain and how we can look at it and view it from a different standpoint because it's my main issue, and then the whole workers comp issue is like it's a dead end, man. And so we don't have the proper tools for dealing with tactical athletes like we are. You know, you have these amazing athletes who are getting like optimal care all the time, and we don't have that. You know, you make a personal choice to go, you know, see your chiropractor once a week after a shift, you know, but that's it. You know, but
Yeah.
a lot of these things are just there's a lot of hidden nuances that we're not seeing that's still building upon chronic issues. And it starts a lot of times with how comfortable or uncomfortable we feel in our bodies.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I personally see it because I've dealt with it myself, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And our organization is something really cool. We just started doing physical therapy.
Mm,
Comes into the firehouse once a week per tour, and there's hour blocks. But like the other day, I woke up, my shoulder. Talking about burnout, chronic pain. My shoulder was kind of like I might have slept on it wrong, and happened to be a therapy day because I think I have some nerve issues. I have a newborn at home, so I'm doing a lot of this
mm.
and a little stem therapy, and I felt great. Just little things that we can do. And this is where I think the mental health and the peer support, and as the fire service is starting to adapt, understand what's going on, the challenges and the tactical athletes, and we're working longer than we were supposed to be working, and all these things, and we're starting to create some positive changes. So it's really, really cool.
That's rad, man. Yeah. I don't know, brother. I think we're coming up on 2 hours here. I don't know if you
Yeah,
have
it's been
anything else you
great.
want to.
It's been awesome. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, of course, man. It was a cool, I guess, segue the way we kind of came together through Instagram and stuff. It
Yeah,
was just not. It was never. Nothing's ever random, in my opinion. You know, it's
no,
always like
universe doesn't get
divine.
it, yeah,
Yeah.
universe doesn't get it wrong. Yeah,
But yeah, I'd love to end on just thanking you so much, brother. You know, your presence, your ability to speak so eloquently and freely on just leadership and how important it is. Uh, I was really enamored by all of it, and I highly respect you, brother, and your field of work.
thank you. Likewise. I wish I took more notes here, but there's so many sound bites of this. I kid you not, that I'm gonna store for myself. I learned a lot of stuff today from you, and I'm gonna bring it back to the firehouse. I think what you're doing is great. It's amazing, and you may not. The notches may be small, but over the course of how many episodes and how many years, you're going to be impacting a lot of lives. I mean, that's how I found you on social media, and uh, I definitely want to do another one of these because I want to talk about energy and object. I feel like there's a lot more that we could be talking about that's going to really expand uh, some of the basis for people just to learn and enjoy this job. And so I thank you for that, and I look forward to it.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
Definitely received that. And oh man, if I told you my whole story, bro, it would blow you away. It was just
We're gonna have to chat.
it's been a long story for myself, and how I've hit rock bottom, and it just like there was only the only other way was to get through it, you know, and to not want other people to get there, you know.
Yep, I appreciate that, and I want to hear it. So let's do it.
Cool,
All right.
man.
All right.
All right, brother. Well, thank you for coming on here. And I'm going to put all of the stuff in the description, how people can reach out to you, find
Okay.
your course, and all that.
All right. Thank you, man.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. I love you guys. Take care.